welcome. My name is Jeff Roberts, and I'll be your host for this edition of Time for a Slow Burn. This program is a monthly event, and we will discuss topics of interest to the southeastern corner of Wisconsin, the state, and of course, nationally. Topics can be just about anything. Usually something that starts off as a discussion, a debate, or just a plain old-fashioned yelling match between friends and neighbors. It's surprising what can get a person all riled up. Usually it's something about local politics or national politics or a television program or something we witnessed firsthand. And sometimes it's just a rumor. For our first topic, I thought it would be a good idea to revisit the gun control issue that keeps popping up on the White House press releases, on the campaign trail, and by both parties in everyday American conversations. Our president keeps telling us the rest of the world doesn't have a gun problem, that they have solved that problem by not allowing their citizens to keep firearms, usually of any kind. On the weird shit-o-meter, that is a 10 on a scale of 1 through 10. 1 being the most truthful and 10 being an outright lie. It's a 10. Let's be honest. That is just another lie told by His Royal Highness King Barry, all to sway the masses to his way of thinking. The American people's opinion has been teetering back and forth for decades, or some of them have, on this very issue. But no real answers to the question, do we need gun control? Well, here's something to consider. All of the countries in Europe that President Barry keeps touting as being gun safe or gun free. In the fact-check websites and on police blotter reports all across the globe, there's a very different story being told. They are not gun safe or gun free or violence free. This piece was done by an unknown author and has been circulating around the internet for about 3 years. And it's called The Question. The question is, who really needs protection? Do we need gun control? Excuse me. That is an interesting question, to be sure. So let's decide how best to address it. I'll let you think about it until the end, and then we'll come back and revisit. So here goes. In 1865, a Southern Democrat named John Wilkes Booth shot and killed Abraham Lincoln. He was President of the United States at the time. In 1881, a left-wing radical Democrat shot James Garfield, President of the United States, who later died. In 1963, a radical left-wing socialist shot and killed John F. Kennedy. He was President of the United States. In 1975, a left-wing radical Democrat fired shots at President Gerald Ford, who was, of course, President of the United States. In 1983, a registered Democrat shot and wounded President Reagan. 1984, James Hubert, a disgruntled Democrat, shot and killed 22 people in a McDonald's restaurant. In 1986, Patrick Serrell, a disgruntled Democrat, shot and killed 15 people in Oklahoma post office, an Oklahoma post office, hence the term going postal. In 1990, James Plow, a disgruntled Democrat, shot and killed 10 people at a GMAC office. In 1991, George Hennard, a disgruntled Democrat, shot and killed 23 people in a Luby's cafeteria in Killeen, Texas. In 1995, James Daniel Simpson, a disgruntled Democrat, shot and killed 5 co-workers in a Texas laboratory. In 1996, Larry Asbrook, a disgruntled Democrat, shot and killed 8 people at a church service. In 2001, a left-wing radical Democrat shot or fired shots at the White House in a failed attempt to kill then President George W. Bush. In 2003, Douglas Williams, a disgruntled Democrat, shot and killed 7 people at a Lockheed Martin plant. In 2007, a registered Democrat named Suing Hu Cho shot and killed 32 people at Virginia Tech University. In 2010, a mentally ill registered Democrat named Jared Lee Louder shot fellow Democrats from the United States Congress, Representative Gabrielle Giffords, and killed 6 others. In 2011, a registered Democrat named James Holmes went into a movie theater and shot and killed 12 people. In 2012, Andrew Ettinger, a disgruntled Democrat shot and killed 7 people in Minneapolis. In 2013, a registered Democrat named Adam Lanza shot and killed 26 adults and children in a school located in Newton, Connecticut. Also in September of 2013, an angry Democrat shot 12 at a Navy shipyard. Well, clearly there's a problem with Democrats possessing firearms. It should be illegal for Democrats to own guns. We don't need gun control. We need Democrat control. Guns don't kill people. Democrats do. That was the end of the piece from the unknown author. As amazing as it seems, what we can really derive from all of this is, well, what no one realizes, this factoid. Not one NRA member or Tea Party member or Republican was involved in any of these mass shootings and outright murders. Now, having said that, it's easy to point fingers at the Democrats for the ills of gun society and gun violence in America today, which is totally unfair, since it serves no useful purpose. But that is something that many of us do not realize. Let's be honest with each other. Let's be honest with each other. It isn't just Americans who are committing mass shootings and outright murder. It's the entire human race. And it's time for the Obama administration to get that through their thick skull. Mass shootings and killings of innocent are global horrors. And it should be noted that each of the countries involved in mass shootings that has been described next, or will be, were thought to have been gun safe or gun free, especially since they have very strict gun control laws. Here are a few examples of the murders across the globe over the years. In 1982, a South Korean police officer went on a shooting rampage, killing 57 people and wounding 38 before he blew himself up with a hand grenade. In 1987, a 27-year-old man from Hungerford, England, killed 16 people and wounded 11 before shooting himself when the police surrounded him. In 1989, a French farmer shot and killed 14 people. That included members of his own family. The farmer was actually wounded and then captured by the French police. In 1990, a New Zealand madman killed 11 people in a 24-hour period at a village in Armonia. He was shot by police and killed. In 1995, Tours, France, a 16-year-old killed 16 people and then committed suicide, all after he had an argument with his parents. In 1996, a Scottish gunman shot dead a teacher and 16 students, then killed himself. Also in 1996, an Australian gunman shot and killed 35 people at Port Arthur, Northern Territory of Tasmania. In 2001, in Nepal, 9 members of the Nepalese royal family were massacred by none other than the crown prince himself. The prince turned the gun on himself and died a few days later. In Erfurt, Germany, a 19-year-old gunman opened fire at a school, killing 12 teachers, a staff member, 2 students, and a policeman before killing himself. The final death toll, 17. In 2007, after explaining his plans to commit mass murder on several YouTube postings, an 18-year-old named Pekka Erik Adevan kills 8 people from his high school in Toulouse, Finland. 2008, in Finland, 1 student opens fire on a vocational school in the northwest of Finland, killing 9 students, 1 staff member, then shoots himself in the head. In 2009, a 17-year-old gunman dressed in black combat gear went on a killing rampage and murdered 9 students, 3 teachers in a school near Stuttgart, Germany. He also killed another person at a clinic nearby. He was later shot and killed by police in a shootout. Also in 2009, a 29-year-old Gadarov somehow enters the prestigious Azerbaijani State Oil Academy in the capital city of Baku. This character is armed with a machine pistol and multiple magazines. By the time he's finished, he's killed 12 people, then commits suicide as police surround him. In 2011, in Norway, a gunman opens fire at a youth summer camp in Norway's ruling political party. It's a camp for them, on the resort island of Utøya, killing 77 people. He also blew up a government building prior to the mass shootings. This sort of thing happens all the time, across the globe. Anytime I hear an American politician call for more stringent gun control laws or outright possession of firearms, I cringe. You can't outlaw the possession. After we come back, I will explain why. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Are you camera shy but would like to get behind the scenes of the fun-filled world of television production? Then Kenosha TV just might be the place for you. Every week, your friends and neighbors on Kenosha TV create new programs. We always need people like you to help direct the shows, man the cameras, tweak the audio, and have a great time in producing programming for Kenosha viewers. No experience is necessary. Kenosha TV provides the training and equipment for you. For more information, give us a call or go to our website.
Welcome back. Here's another factoid for you. One of the greatest generation learned the hard way. So sit up, pay attention, and don't commit the same mistakes in history has shown that humans actually do, over and over again. We were to blame for allowing this type of abomination to happen over and over again. So far, it has cost the lives of millions, just starting in the 20th century alone. It cost even more than that prior to that. Millions were murdered prior to the start of the 20th century, but somehow we can't seem to think about those dates, times, and horrible situations nearly as much as the recent tale of absolute horror. Yes, I say millions. All done at the behest of governments and megalomaniacs across the world. Some were charter members of the United Nations. Some are still on the Security Council and the most powerful council in the UN. So here goes. I hope you're not squeamish when you hear this. These are deaths attributed to the Soviet Gulag system. Over 61 million have lost their lives. Majority of them were loyal Russians. The Japanese imperial military machine committed nearly 6 million deaths in World War II. The Communist Chinese have been credited with the deaths of over 35 million. The hated Khmer Rouge outlaw government murdered over 2 million of its educators and artists in Cambodia. Nazi Germany, the Third Reich, committed nearly 21 million murders. Turkey has committed genocide during its purges to the tune of 1.9 million people. Millions have been killed by various governments and those who were in charge, all for the sake of assuming power, maintaining power, or challenging those who were considered a threat to those who were in power at the time. So how did this happen, you have to ask? I know I have several times. The first thing that an outlaw state does was to disarm their citizens, as evidenced by the Nazis following Adolf Hitler's executive orders. The Jews were disarmed and then forced to submit to registration, and by force if necessary. Then began the roundup of those who were considered to be undesirables, or those who were considered criminals. Just a thought of as criminals, no proof was necessary. And anyone considered to be a political dissenter, we also called them victims. For the Soviet Union, the Gulag system was the answer. Prisoners usually disappeared after a year or two of incarceration. For those who were able to survive for a while longer, they were usually starved, tortured, or worked to death. Few actually made it back to Russian society after being sent to a gulag. The Nazis had concentration camps where prisoners were gassed, burned, or experimented on. A fraction of the Jews who were in prison were set free after the conclusion of the war. The Japanese military slaughtered prisoners by the thousands throughout their conquest or through POW camps. Little food, no water, sanitation facilities, horrible overcrowding were prevalent all over the POW camps. New and ingenious ways to kill prisoners and torture them were developed by the Japanese military. Surrender was considered a disgrace by the Japanese, and they treated their POWs as though each was less than human. The Chinese and Koreans were especially suitable targets for the horrible treatment by the Japanese military rulers, especially since Japan has been at war with China and Korea for centuries. When a prisoner was no longer able to work or keep up with the death marches, they were bayoneted, sometimes just instead of being shot, just to save bullets. The Khmer Rouge were especially nasty when it came to killing. This group controlled Cambodia for decades and meted out death to educators, artists, and merchants without regard for life. Pol Pot, the leader of the Khmer Rouge government, once sat on a throne of skulls of his victims while he decided who would live and who would die. There are many more stories and facts that have been uncovered over the decades. Some have been covered up by governments that were unwilling to admit their grievous past or past mistakes in letting it allowed to continue to happen. For others, they were not willing to own up to their own government or individuals being corrupt or even criminal. You can decide which one they are for yourself. With a bit of time and research, all can be discovered. We see constant reminders of those who are in charge of outlaw states nearly every day. The Middle East is rife with criminals and butchers who claim to be legitimate, elected leaders, but are really nothing more than the next round of warlords drawn from the local villages or strong-armed tribal leaders who will kill to maintain power over others, rather than suffer through coordinated and monitoring of elections by the people and for the people. We have examples like Gaddafi, Hussein, Assad, and nearly every other despot you can name, who previously held power or currently. And they all have one thing in common. They are ready, willing, and able to commit murder on a grand scale to maintain that power. Thankfully, Gaddafi and Hussein are both dead. Gaddafi in a bloody coup against him, and Hussein was captured by American forces and then tried for his crimes against humanity and hung. Assad still rules Syria with an iron fist and canisters of nerve gas. Despite the posturing by President Obama and his silly red line in the sand rubbish, Assad has crossed that red line so many times, Obama doesn't even bother drawing it anymore. Obama's absurd attempts at controlling the Middle East situation as it unfolds and then refolds and then again is just pitiful. Sadly, his approach is just so much hot wind blowing across the desert. Doesn't do much because that's what it's supposed to do. An hour later, you can't even tell it was there at all. The same for Obama. He thinks he's supposed to threaten, then cajole, and on it goes. What do we expect? Obama postulated himself before the Arabs in Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and other Middle Eastern countries during his first visit to the region. No American president has ever bowed down or apologized to any government leader for America being a great country. Well, this is until His Royal Highness King Barry did it with a caliph, then a couple of Arab princes and their harem, and finally to a handful of Arabian oil barons. That's what they are. All the while telling the world America is not exceptional and we can't be trusted, thus causing members of Congress to howl at the top of their lungs from both sides of the aisle. Well, that was King Barry's first term in office. Now the world knows they can do what they want, and Barry will just run his mouth on TV and the press will eat it up. But nothing will get done. Same in the case of Russia invading the Ukraine. King Barry ran to the American media and they praised him for his strength. Really? He's from Chicago. He couldn't figure out the Middle East or what's happening in Russia if he had 10 terms in office. All he knows how to do is bribe and make silly promises he can't keep, and he's not empowered to. King Barry keeps forgetting the American form of government has 3 branches. The executive branch is only one of the 3. We still have the legislative branch, which is Congress, and the judicial branch, which is the courts. He can't continue to circumvent the other 2 branches of government, or he will get impeached, just like his Democratic brother, William Jefferson Clinton did. His final 9 months of the Obama administration will be interesting, to say the least. He has pissed off the military for his lack of understanding of global politics and the lack of experience in military affairs, especially on a global scale. This will cause historians to label his administration as laughable. He runs the American domestic policy with the AccuDart system, and we all know how that came about. It's one of the most hated systems in Washington, D.C. You put a bunch of goofy policy statements on Post-it notes, stick them on one wall, and throw darts at it. If it sticks to the Post-it note, that's what you say at the next press conference. That method left the moron Jay Carney and the current press secretary scrambling to figure out what to say, and got themselves into a lot of trouble over that type of stupid policy statements they both have made over the years. Since Obama is out of the Oval, as soon as Obama is out of the Oval Office, good luck getting a real job without help, especially for Carney. Now he's just out there adrift somewhere, thankfully. Seems like it never ends, does it? Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're watching Kenosha Community Television.
Welcome back. There's been a lot of reaction to everyone trying to be politically correct all the time and in all matters. I laugh when I hear people who are supposed to be intelligent say stupid things. For those who are trying to keep the points and score up to date on the latest issues of being politically correct, here's a story that you will absolutely hate. There's no love in this for you at all. I love it because it reminds me that we're all human. We may have grown up on different parts of America, but we are Americans. We may have eaten different foods, went to different schools, discovered our childhood would eventually lead to adulthood in different methods, but our parents, they spoke the same language, and it was English. They may have spoken it with a different accent, but, and it depended on which region you were from, but it was still English. Was it really an accent after all? Who's to say? Everyone has an accent. Well, that's the fun part of this piece. If you're offended by anything George Willis has to say, too bad. That's the way many of us grew up. Because he speaks his mind, many shake their heads and declare they are offended. I think it's very refreshing. So let's give it a listen, shall we?
Well, it may be a little early in the week for a rant, but I got a message today that I thought you might enjoy. Somebody said, Chad, we're offended by your southern accent. It proves to us you're not intelligent. Well, maybe I'm not that smart. I would love to be as smooth, sophisticated, suave, and debonair as those of you who send me those messages seem to be. I wish that I could articulate my thoughts and enunciate my words as well as you master communicators must be capable of doing. However, I grew up in the state of Georgia where a southern dialect really was our only option. And now, after living all these years in the state of Texas, nobody yet has stopped me for using a phrase such as y'all, or gonna, or fixin' to. Yet you say it makes me sound less than intelligent. You can stop listening. In fact, nobody ever invited you into the conversation. It's okay. Just walk away. If that's all it takes really to offend your feeble mind, however, let me remind you, we got a lot of guns down here. We hunt, we fish, we burn up the ozone layer with our four-wheel drive trucks and our diesel engines. We refer to women in our lives as dear darling and sweetheart, not as a term that's derogatory or offensive, but as a term of endearment, and most of them tend to like it. We teach our children to say ma'am and sir to their elders, and to do so for the rest of their lives as a sign of respect, no matter how old they get. Believe it or not, no matter what the media wants to tell you, we get along by and large with people who are not just like us, whether it's differences in the color of their skin or the country they come from, or yes, even those of you up north. Y'all come on down. And ladies, no matter how liberated you get, we as Southern gentlemen, we've been taught and we're going to fight for the right to hold the door open for you. I'm sorry if that's offensive. Yeah, our parents disciplined us as we were growing up with something a little bit stronger than time out, and it taught us self-respect, self-discipline, and respect for other people. I'm sorry if the way we talk offends you. Not really. Hey, love y'all, really do. And here's another term we use down south, and we're not ashamed of it. God bless. Facebook poke.
Welcome back. There's been a lot said lately about saving energy. America is the #1 producer and exporter of natural gas and propane, and our gasoline prices are at rock bottom. We are able to do more and buy more when it comes to homegrown energy than ever before. despite the rhetorical nonsense from Washington, D.C., and specifically from the White House about greenhouse gases and the cars we drive. And I've had a couple of guests who spoke on it as well. But it seems that the opponents of our energy abundance think we should be praying to the gods of the oil barons from the Arab states in the Middle East, or worship the ground President Barry walks on because he is so smart. After all, he speaks so eloquently on the topic of greenhouse gases and such great energy policies that he's laid out for America. So I felt it was time for a bit different approach. So here to speak to those who feel hybrid and electric cars are really the only way for the future of America and the world is Bjorn Lomborg, director of the Copenhagen Consensus Center for Prager University.
Do electric cars really help the environment? President Obama thinks so. So does Leonardo DiCaprio and many others. The argument goes like this. Regular cars run on gasoline, a fossil fuel that pumps CO2 straight out of the tailpipe and into the atmosphere. Electric cars run on electricity. They don't burn any gasoline at all. No gas, no CO2. In fact, electric cars are often advertised as creating zero emissions. But do they really? Let's take a closer look. First, there's the energy needed to produce the car. More than a third of the lifetime carbon dioxide emissions from an electric car comes from the energy used to make the car itself, especially the battery. The mining of lithium, for instance, is not a green activity. When an electric car rolls off the production line, it's already been responsible for more than 25,000 pounds of carbon dioxide emissions. The amount for making a conventional car, just 16,000 pounds. But that's not the end of the CO2 emissions. Because while it's true that electric cars don't run on gasoline, they do run on electricity, which in the US is often produced by another fossil fuel, coal. As green venture capitalist Vinod Khosla likes to point out, electric cars are coal-powered cars. The most popular electric car, the Nissan Leaf, over a 90,000-mile lifetime will emit 31 metric tons of CO2 based on emissions from its production, its electricity consumption at average US fuel mix, and its ultimate scrapping. A comparable Mercedes CDI A160 over a similar lifetime will emit just 3 tons more across its production, diesel consumption, and ultimate scrapping. The results are similar for a top-line Tesla, the king of electric cars. It emits about 44 tons, which is only 5 tons less than a similar Audi A7 Quattro. So throughout the full life of an electric car, it will emit just 3 to 5 tons less CO2. In Europe, on its European trading system, it currently costs $7 to cut 1 ton of CO2. So the entire climate benefit of an electric car is about $35. Yet the US federal government essentially provides electric car buyers with a subsidy of up to $7,500. Paying $7,500 for something you could get for $35 is a very poor deal. And that doesn't include the billions more in federal and state grants, loans, and tax write-offs that go directly to battery and electric car makers. The other main benefit from electric cars is supposed to be lower pollution. But remember Vinod Khosla's observation. Electric cars are coal-powered cars. Yes, it might be powered by coal, proponents will say, but unlike the regular car, coal plant emissions are far away from city centers, where most people live and where damage from air pollution is greatest. However, new research in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found that while gasoline cars pollute closer to home, coal-fired power actually pollutes more, a lot more. How much more? Well, the researchers estimate that if the US has 10% more gasoline cars in 2020, 870 more people will die each year from the additional air pollution. If the US has 10% more electric vehicles powered on the average US electricity mix, 1,617 more people will die every year from the extra pollution. Twice as many. But of course, electricity from renewables like solar and wind creates energy for electric cars without CO2. Won't the perceived rapid ramp-up of these renewables make future electric cars much cleaner? Unfortunately, this is mostly wishful thinking. Today, the US gets 14% of its electric power from renewables. In 25 years, Obama's Energy Information Administration estimates that number will have gone up just 3 percentage points to 17%. Meanwhile, those fossil fuels that generate 65% of US electricity today will still generate about 64% of it in 2040. While electric car owners may cruise around feeling virtuous, the reality is that the electric car cuts almost no CO2, costs taxpayers a fortune, and surprisingly generates more air pollution than traditional gasoline cars. I'm Bjorn Lomborg, president of the Copenhagen Consensus Center.
Well, that's it for another edition of Time for a Slow Burn. Tune in next time for topics of interest that tend to burn your hide. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.